Hello and welcome to the Legendary Green Team, where we talk about speculative fiction that the other Legendary hasn't gotten to, and a few repeats. My name is Hurin Fan, and I'm joined today by Stormrunner.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. Starkast
Hi.
and Cesky.
Hello, everybody.
This episode was inspired by all the YouTubers I saw giving their terrible best reads of 2023, and me saying I could do much better than that. Also, specifically because Philip Chase asked if we were going to do one, and I said, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do it. So we have a top 10 list of the best reads that we read last year. We all have different criteria, and I'm going to let all of us explain that before we start. And we don't have a lot of time, so let's get started. I will share my criteria. I guess it just needs to be speculative fiction. This is just my personal criteria, and it's based entirely on my enjoyment. I think most of my reads are very, very quality, and I'll talk about those. But it really was just mostly just how much I enjoyed them. I'm not going to be making any critical remarks. I'm not a critic or a good reviewer by any means. It needs to be a new read for me. I didn't have any rereads this year. I mean, I had lots of rereads, but I didn't put rereads on my list. And I think that's it. Storm, do you want to share your criteria?
Yeah, my criteria was pretty much the same. I mean, in the sense that
apologies. One more thing. I did no repeat authors.
Yeah, that's something I had to make sure I went back and fixed. Yeah, no repeat authors, speculative fiction. I have one that is not speculative fiction if anyone else also does, but I can also not talk about that one. But yeah, speculative fiction, no repeat authors, mostly based on just how much I enjoyed reading the book. That's pretty much it.
Cool. Chesky, you?
Yeah, I had the same pretty much criteria. No repeat authors. I have one book that's a nonfiction, but I really enjoyed it, so that's why I put it on the list. And that's my main criteria was, how much did I really enjoy it? I'll tell you when we get there, but I wasn't. You'll see.
Okay. Star?
Yeah, mine was pretty much the same. The only thing I added was that I wanted to make a list where all the authors or the books weren't as well known. Like, for example, Sanderson was a contender, but I decided, well, everyone knows him basically, and they know if they want to read him or not. So it doesn't really make any sense for me to talk about him when everyone already has their own opinion about him.
That's fair.
So yeah.
I probably should have done something similar. I'm very basic. Cool. So we shared all that. I don't want to end on a negative note, and I kind of casually mentioned that we'll do a worst of the year read segment. This isn't like I don't plan on spending a lot of time on this because it's not really fun for listeners to hear us dunk on their favorite books. But maybe if the listeners hear me mention that I literally hated them with a book that they love with their guts, maybe they could just disregard my opinion for the rest of the episode. It might be helpful for that way.
Post why we're wrong in the comments.
How about Star? How about Star? Do you have any worst of 2023 reads?
Mine is gonna be pretty controversial. As
Oh,
everyone here knows, the Hexologists.
That was your
oh,
worst?
Boo.
Wow.
Boo.
boo!
Please
Just that
elaborate.
one.
Well, it was the one that remained the most in my mind because it was like I could see every twist coming, and how should I say? It was like when I began the book, it was like, oh God, I hope it won't go in that direction, and then I was like, oh thank God, it won't go in that direction, and in the
And
end
then
it was fuck, they go in that direction.
All right, so
Yeah.
the listeners heard it. We could all disregard Starcast for the rest of the episode. Anything else, Star?
No, that was the
That's
one.
really only that one. Okay.
Well,
Sorry.
I'm someone who DNFs pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
Right.
So
Storm, you were gonna say something?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I can see where someone would be turned off by Hexologist in the sense that it does tend to very systematically move from one scene to the next, which I could see becoming repetitive depending on what you do or don't like about that genre.
It's definitely very much a procedural police book.
Mhm.
Cool. Chesky, what do you think?
Yeah, I've got some books that I didn't like this year. I DNF'd just one book, The Shadow Spinner. I just couldn't get into it. Just horrible POV shifts and other things that really made it horrible for me. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, beautifully written, but the worst plot imaginable. I mean, just so boring and dry. Yeah, hate me here and hate me, but you know it's
I
true. 1,000 pages of absolutely nothing happening. We don't even get the second title character until over like 50% of the way through the book.
oh God, thank God I DNF'd. I did
It's
I DNF'd it after 50 pages this year. Like
yeah. It
like
started strong. It did not continue. I thought I was gonna like it, but I read The Awakening, it's a series by Caroline Peckham and somebody else. It's just trash. It's just trash. It
You read
was
the whole
so bad.
series? Even though
No,
it's
I read
trash?
3 out of like 12 books that's still going. It's like just end your freaking romance, please. Yeah, that's a cursed book you hold there. Uh, it's just bad. They had things like it's a Fey world, so it's like a Fey Rari or a Fey book or Fey cotton candy, and I'm like, just call it cotton candy. You don't have to make everything like this. It was
Wow, I gotta
bad.
check this out. Ferrari?
I will
That
send
sounds
you the
amazing.
book title, and
That that
you'll hate it.
that sounds very Batman and Robin. Where everything has bat in the title.
Yeah,
Ferrari.
they tried to do something like that.
Storm?
Uh,
Well, I do see why someone might be turned off by Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I think it's beautifully written, but also if you don't like British tea parties, then it's it'd be a bit slow.
Come on, you gotta get more controversial than that.
I-
You're always so level-headed and like, oh, I could understand your point of view. No, you gotta say
Well,
you're
we're
wrong and
we're
you're stupid because you're wrong.
there is going to be a debate in this episode, and it's about to come. The book's about to come up.
Oh, okay.
So, well, there were two for me that stuck out as my worst reads from 2020, or worst books I read in 2023. The first would be Magic for Liars by Sarah Gailey. I was just kind of bored by it. It wasn't awful, but I just felt like the book kind of moved very systematically, like similar to what Star was saying about or what I was saying about Hexologists. I was kind of bored by it. The real worst book that I read in 2023 was
oh
None of the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. It
no.
the series does, and we can either choose to hash this out now or later, but
Later.
yeah, we'll do it later. Then I'll just say at a high level, I was bored by it. I didn't care about many of the characters or versions of characters that we got in this book, other than a few of the plot things that the author wanted us to know for book 4.
Cool.
I like it.
I included 3 books in my worst reads of the year, and I think people in the Discord will already know most of these. Fourth Wing, mostly just because it was really, really, really hyped, and it ended up being really, really, really bad. Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, same problem, but it like literally the most lazy book I've ever read.
I can't believe you hate that one. Still,
If you know why I'm calling it lazy.
you're wrong. Sorry.
And then Kaiju Preservation Society, which is
Also
quite
wrong.
possibly the most unfunny book I've ever read. So, thanks.
You got to
John
read some other
Halsey.
unfunny books.
It's hard
You
to
got to
top
learn some
that
true unfunny.
one. Maybe I'll check out this Ferrari book you keep talking about.
Yeah.
All right, so that out of the way, I thought we would do countdown from 10 in alphabetical order. So it would go Chesky, me, Star, and then Storm. And Starkast is not in any order, so he's just going to give it the way he wants. Chesky, what
Yep.
is your 10th favorite book of you've read in 2023?
Mine are not numbered, but I did kind of put them in a general feeling order, but don't quote me on it because it's not perfect. So number 10,
You
I'm
put
going
it
to
in a
put,
general feeling order. Quote.
yeah, general feeling, but not exact, right? So like there's variance. Some days I like one more or put it down lower, right? I'm going to just read off the Eye of Argon by Jim Theiss. Such a fun book, so small, everybody should read it. Horribly written. It needs like 6 editors to go through it with a fine-tooth comb before you could even begin to call it passable. But just the amount of fun you have while reading it is just so over the top. It had to get put on the list.
I think that's an excellent addition. And to follow up, I will also put Eye of Argon as my 10th favorite book of 2023 I read. This is one of many books that I included on here that the Green Team has covered. And I think if you want to talk about books that are terrible but nonetheless really enjoyed a lot, I would love to hear more recommendations, and we might be covering some more. But it's literally one of the worst things. It might be the worst thing that I've ever read. And no other books that I read this year were nearly as much fun. It's like the
pretty
Mona
bad
Lisa.
in a technical sense.
It's like the Mona Lisa of bad books. And if slapping yourself in the face were prose, the Eye of Argon might be it. I might get a tattoo of Grigner. He's the best.
Is it on the same level of the Battle of the Linguist Mages?
It's so much worse. Like the Battle of the Linguist Mages, like it was truly terrible, but like you can't even really compare them.
I was gonna say because one's a full book and one's like 6.5 chapters.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's really, really like it doesn't overstay its welcome because it's so short. It's a novella.
It's so bad.
I don't know if I could read like 300 pages of it, but like the length was impeccable.
Just from a technicality perspective, I think listeners will love the fact that you have Eye of Argon in your top 10 and that Yumi is in your worst reads.
Well, because Eye of Argon's fun and Yumi was not.
Again, with the wrong opinions here, Hurin. Come on.
I especially like the part in Yumi where he stops for a chapter and a half and addresses the audience and explains everything that happened, because I'm an idiot and obviously the author thinks that I am. All right, number 10 for Star.
Yeah, I'm gonna choose The Crane Husband by, I didn't write the name, by Kelly Barnhill. Kelly
Okay.
Barnhill.
The
Yeah.
Crane Husband.
Yeah, The Crane Husband.
Okay.
It's a literary horror novella, and it's about a girl and her younger brother whose mother brings home a new husband, and it's a crane. Surprise, surprise. And it deals with a lot of different themes, but the main themes are basically child abuse and neglect, and in general, the circle of abuse and how it can perpetuate it further. And it was a really dark read, but it was also really, really good. Like it was really atmospheric. Like you really felt how the main character felt, like in a sense that despair and the angst just. And I really, really liked it just.
It sounds like magical realism, like
Yeah,
but horror.
like yes, basically
Oh.
that.
It sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it's really
Thanks.
short, so you can read it in an afternoon.
Well,
Like
your
it's
criteria are
160.
working because I hadn't heard of it, and now I have.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Storm, you're number 10.
My number 10, like similar to Cesky, I do have them ranked, but it is by, well, not quite as strict as far as that goes. But I have at number 10, Startide Rising by David Brin. I thought the book, I thought the book was a little too long for what it was trying to accomplish. Or at least that the scenes and points of view could have been shorter, but the idea of uplift and different races granting other races sentience was very interesting, and following those dynamics throughout the book was compelling enough to make the journey worthwhile.
What's all the
and also-
haikus?
The what? Sorry.
The haikus.
Oh yes, the parts that I kind of like skipped over. Yeah. Also, there are cool space battles.
The Dolphin Beaver is my favorite.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I second that one. And that's another book that the Green Team has covered. Okay. Chesky, you're number 9?
My number 9, I'm going to go with The Book Eaters by Sunya Dean.
Mm.
It's a fun book about vampires, but they eat books instead of people, unless you're one of the unlucky ones. It has a lot of twists, and it was fun.
One of the unlucky ones, is this like capitalized, or is they just like they get like a line of books, but they sometimes like accidentally eat a person?
Well, it's kind of like your main species eats books, and every so often you have one that eats minds.
I see. Okay.
So It's fun, well written, competent, pretty quick. It was a little bit less horror than I was expecting. I kind of went in thinking it would be more horror. If you read the blurb, it sounds like it's going to be a horror book, and it's less horror, but it was still fun and good.
Cool. My number 9, we've already talked about. It is The Hexologists by Josiah Bancroft. This is, again, another book that we covered on Green Team. And I recommend listening to that episode because I adored this book. I worship this book, and Josiah Bancroft has shot up the list of my favorite authors. And I'd previously read his Babel series, and I loved that. And honestly, I think about it more as time goes on. And if you didn't like the ending, maybe you should stop listening to this episode now because the ending was incredible. But the
Just
Hexologist,
go.
yeah, just go.
I
Uh,
am surprised by the disconnect of people who didn't like
Fall of
the
Babel.
Hexologists versus liking the Fall of Babel, the Books of Babel.
Oh, really? Was there? I'm not familiar with like how they correlate.
Yeah, me.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people in Discord who like Books of Babel, don't like Hexologists. That's all.
Mm.
I only know Star, but I've known that for a long time. The Hexologist is about like a detective, magic user, is and always will be. It's got some great puns. The book's funny. The book thrives in the interaction between the husband character and the wife character, and they're so well realized. And Josiah Bancroft is so good at setting up these characters with just one paragraph and letting you know exactly what kind of people they are with his language, because he's such a good prose stylist. And I had to use my dictionary. I love to use my dictionary while I'm reading. It's about power, love, class, and it's a romping adventure with humor and love and lots of sex.
Yeah, I do want to get to Babel because I've heard good. Well, books of Babel, I should specify, not the book Babel, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I've heard good things.
I highly recommend it. I think we all liked it, right? All of us here have read it.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
We did the
Hexologist is good.
episode on the 4th one. Yeah, I highly recommend it. And yeah, your turn.
So it's a kind of a surprising book for me because I didn't expect it to like it as much when I started it. And it was A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. And I have to say, I did not like Priory of the Orange Tree. Like, from the 4 characters in the first book, I hated 3. And the one character I liked had a lot of, well, unnecessary stops. For like, she was in that location and in that location and do. And yeah. And so I didn't expect it to like it as much when I started the prequel, but oh my god, it was so much better. Like so
It's a
much.
prequel to The Prayer of the Orange Tree.
Yes.
I see.
And it follows completely different characters.
I never even heard
Like,
it. I didn't know there was a prequel until you
Yeah.
just mentioned it. So again,
it
congratulations.
came out this year in last year in February, I think. And yes, it's so much better. I loved all the characters. The plot was really interesting. And we had so many more queer characters. And like also different ages. And I don't know how should I summarize it, but it's pretty much an epic about surviving and not winning, like this yeah.
Hmm.
And
Tragedy?
it's
A tragedy?
kind of
I like tragedy.
kind of. You could categorize certain plot lines as a tragedy. Yes. Even the author said that. So, like,
Yeah.
she has written it in that way, and it's also about grief and well, queer relationships, as I said. And I think the strongest theme in the book is motherhood. Like, everything goes back to motherhood in this book. From the plot to the characters to character relationships, everything comes back to motherhood. And I really like that exploration of it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, sounds
Yeah,
great.
And I've heard at least Priory of the Orange Trees has been on my list for a while, so it's good to know that the other books I heard are good as well.
I've heard
Well,
such
I've heard
mixed things, and
or
it's so
mixed,
long
yeah.
that I've been scared to pick it up.
Like, you can pick, you can begin both with a Priory and with a Night of Fallen Day, a Fallen Night, and I would say start with a Day of Fallen Night. It's just so much better in my opinion.
Well, I can definitely do that when I get to it.
Orm?
My ninth favorite book that I read this year was Ashes of the Sun by Django Wexler. It is a pretty fun, somewhat no frills, so to speak, epic fantasy story with fantasy Jedi and cool magitech. I don't have a ton else other than it is a fun adventure, and I'm looking forward to reading the sequels.
Yeah.
If you say Magitech, you mean like Final Fantasy VI?
Probably. I haven't gotten to 6 yet.
Okay.
Final Fantasy wise, I mean, I know of it. Yeah, probably more 6 than 7. Certainly not 7. It's fantasy. It's not cyberpunk, but yeah, probably more 6 if I had to guess.
Sounds great.
Back to
I'll put it
Chesky?
on my list. Yep, my number 8
8.
would be The Hexologists by Josiah Bancroft. Just such a great book. So fun. Characters are amazing. The first line of the book is amazing. And the first line really hooks you in, you know. The king wishes to be baked into a cake. I mean, come on. That's a great start to a book. I mean, let's go, right? I can't say much else about it. It was really great. It was really exciting. Can't wait to see the next books in the series if they come out. If and when. So
And they're coming out. All right. I guess I'm next then. My number 8 was A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. It's a novella, so keep that in mind. But I had previously read the first 2 Wayfarers book by Chambers, and I liked them well enough. Especially the second one. It had a really interesting AI POV. But the Monk and Robot series is so much more interesting in my opinion, and it's really really low stakes. I guess some people might call it cozy, but it takes place in like a post scarcity utopia. But it's really just a friendship between a monk and a robot, and their relationships about like consciousness, identity, religion, ontology, epistemology. I could read it. I could just keep reading it, and I hope that the series go on forever. I can't recommend it highly enough.
I
But-
think it's supposed to be already completed because
There's only
I-
2.
yes, it's so sad.
That's
I
not
wanted
no.
more.
That's not okay.
I want more. Like it was sold to Thor as a duology. So maybe if Thor is very very nice, they could buy some more books from Becky Chamber. Like
Come on, Becky.
please.
Please, Becky, we're begging you.
write some more. Just do it.
Start. You ruined my night. All right, your turn. Star number 8.
Yeah. Another more unknown book, The Terraformers by Anna Lee Newich. The author uses datum, and it's a far future sci-fi novel, and it's about a planet that is in the middle of being terraformed, and all the people living there are owned by a corporation who has bought this planet, and it's basic. And then basically, we follow those people in three acts, which span thousands of years, and like it's 3 novellas in one book, basically, and we in each novella we follow a different character, and like it has really really good themes, and I think also a really interesting plot. But the negative is the characters are a little bit flat. They're likable, but they're not the most complex. So if you want a complex character, don't. This is not the book for you. But if you like themes and interesting plot about corporate-owned planets and revolution, then this is a book for you. And it's also queer normative. So yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty interesting. I'm
It is like
especially looking at um, those characters across an extended period of time.
mm, yes. Like I said, the characters are the weakest point of the book for my liking, but everything else is just so good. Like it took me a while to get into it. It took me 3 or 4 tries to get to it, but it was worth it.
Ooh. Storm, you're next.
My number 8 was Artificial Condition by Martha Wells.
Mm.
I think this is the best, or it's my favorite Murderbot book. Like the rest of, well, I haven't read past the fourth one yet, but or novella, I should say. Like the rest Murder of the books, Murderbot's voice is very funny but still poignant. And Art, in my opinion, is the best character in the series, at least for the first 4 books. And yeah, a lot of fun, funny for the rest
Another
of the stories.
book that
Another
we
good
have a
one.
Green Team episode on.
That's right.
I want your opinions when you get to the newest one because I was the only one whose favorite was that one.
Noted.
Chesky, you're next. Number 7.
Yeah, number 7, I chose The Last Echo of the Lord of Bells, the final book in the Mage Errant series by John Bierce. A good, satisfying conclusion to a series. He could have tried pushing it out further, but I like that he ended it. It was fun. That's really all that matters, right? It was a fun ending to a fun book series. Light, but still has some poignant parts. So,
Cool.
yeah.
My number 7 is Forge of the High Mage by Ian C. Esselmont. And I love Ian C. Esselmont. He's one of my top 5 favorite authors, probably my second favorite living author. And this is one of his best, in my opinion. It's got sometimes you see people like, hey, I want like fantasy that takes place on boats. Like almost every single one of this guy's books takes place on boats. There's like naval warfare and they're shooting at each other and there's magic and there's water magic and there's pirates. God, I love that stuff. It's got moral complexity, which is just par for the course for all the Malazan books. I consider it a lot tighter than some of his other stuff. And it has a lot more room to breathe, unlike the last book, which is the only one that I didn't love of his books. It explores themes of historicity, empire, religion, interpretation. It has some real surprises and a few inclusions of Erikson's characters with different takes. And I don't know. I think I'm gonna reread it this year again.
Sounds fun.
I'm very slowly making my way through Malazan, so that
So is
at some
Chesky.
point,
Not a good fit.
at some point in 2025 or 2026, I'll have an opinion on that.
All right, Star.
Mhm.
Number 7
Yo,
of your unordered
my
list.
number 7 is Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk, who is a queer black non-binary author. And it's a short novella, very fun. And it's about a detective who sold her soul to a demon for reasons I can't name. um, and she gets roped into a new case. And if she manages to solve this new case, she gets her soul back and can remain with her lover. And the thing is, she has only 2 to 3 days because then the 10 years are over and her soul, her death is due. Let's say it like that.
I like
Cool.
it. Yeah,
Sounds like
that sounds
Faust.
great.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
may write that down. I'm always looking for more queer stuff.
I'm always looking
Like
for more Faustian bargains.
I have so many queer books here. Like from the 10 books, 8 are queer.
That's fan of that.
Storm.
My number 7 is The Fifth Head of Cerberus by Gene
Ooh.
Wolfe. I'll say the whole collection of all 3 novellas. The first novella was my favorite of those. I admittedly did not understand most of the second one, and the third one was interesting, even if I completely didn't like catch a major twist, even after it was like after I had finished the book. But
That's Wolf.
it's yeah, so it's the amount of discussion that the book generates alone is like notable and exceptional. The whole book, per a lot of other Wolfe stuff, is a puzzle box, which is fun to piece together.
I'm going to talk about this book later.
Okay.
Well,
hmm
sounds good.
It's a good book.
Chesky, your number 6.
Yep. My number 6 is going to be The Necromancer's House by Christopher Buehlman. Yeah, it was an interesting, fun read. I read his other book that he just published. I don't remember what it's called, The Black Tongue Thief. I really liked it, so I went back and read this one. I thought it held up. It's different, but fun and good. Very
You said
intense.
it's not a sequel. It's a different.
This is a different series. It's a standalone, kind of on its own. Yeah.
Cool. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number 6 for me is The Man Who Was Thursday by G.K. Chesterton. In case any of you care, Gene Wolfe is a fan of Chesterton, and he specifically recommended this book in one of his forwards to his short story collection. It's a Christian allegory, and I got on my radar because somebody in the Discord is just like, just can read Chesterton, blah, blah, blah. But then Craig finally did an episode on it last year, and so I just like, oh, fine, I'll finally read it, and it was really, really, really good. Like, I was really surprised how good it was. Maybe I'm closed-minded and stupid, but it's a metaphysical thriller with twists and turns, humor, politics, intrigue, and lots of ambiguity, and that's the kind of stuff that I love. So check it out. It's not very long either.
Yeah. Heard good things about it every time I hear it. So.
Star.
Yeah. So I have to plug a chicken with Cesky. And yes, I did translate it from German and English.
That's a good way to say that.
Yeah.
You have to pluck a chicken with Chesky?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a
It's like
German
you got a
saying.
bone to pick or something?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Ah, I like it.
Yes. So April 2022. The year of 2022, we in our Discord did each month a different theme, and each of us had to choose one and host it. And Cesky, if I remember correctly, chose short stories. And for 31 days, I read each day a short story.
Oh.
And I liked it well enough, but after those 31 days, I got back to my normal books. But over the next 1 year, my reading got shorter and shorter and shorter. Also, all my books got just shorter and shorter until now, my last 4 books all were short story collection. And this last year, I read 17 short story collection and another 30 short stories.
Wow,
So I
that's
have to
impressive.
blame you.
Well,
Yeah.
it works.
So my next book is one of those short story collections. One of 3 I chose for my top 10 list. And this one is Boys, Beasts, and Men by Sam J. Miller. And it's basically a queer short story collection, which are kind of horror themed, like just slightly. Not all of the short stories are per se horror, but there are interludes which connect all the short stories and which gives kind of a sense of an underlying horror. And like the short stories about very, very different things, but basically they're either about masculinity, about queer teenagerhood, or about self-hate, or kind of queer experience. And it was really, really interesting because especially the last interlude and the last short story just brought the whole book together in a way. Yes.
I've
I
been reading
don't
a lot of short
typically
stories.
do.
Go ahead, Storm. Sorry.
I don't typically really do horror. It's typically the only thing that I won't really read. But that's the way you describe that is intriguing, and particularly how it's more about the themes that it's exploring is the more horror
Yes.
element.
Yes.
Most
Yes.
good horror is like
Definitely.
that.
a lot of horror is in that space. Like the two genres I really explored last year was horror and short stories. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't read a lot of horror, but I have a lot of respect for it. I too read a lot
yeah,
of short stories last year, and I'm still continuing to.
yeah.
365 and 365. Uh,
Yeah.
Storm?
Uh, my number 6 is it's an indie book called Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Erikson.
So
Uh,
indie. So indie.
so indie, I know it's very niche. Well, some might say it is. Depending on, no, it is an epic book that I enjoyed reading. Erikson does hit on every aspect of what makes fantasy cool and worth reading. There's awesome magic, cool gods, awesome battle scenes, fun characters. That being said, I totally get why a lot of people bounce off the book in the series. It's This one in particular is structured in an unconventional way that I could see being difficult to follow. Uh, I personally didn't have like issues tracking what was going on, and but the book doesn't really have a strong central narrative thread, I would probably say, and I'm sure I'll get plenty of comments about that statement. Uh, but it shows a lot of cool stuff and made me excited to continue the series.
I
This is a
approve.
safe space. You don't have to say you loved it if you didn't. Like, this is a
I
safe space.
Um,
I said what I said about it.
this is also another book that we have episodes on, so check it out, listeners. Cool. Next, Chesky, number
Chesky.
5.
Number 5. My 5th book I'm going to put out was, or I'm going to talk about was Kaikei by Vaishnavi Patel. Craig and the Legendarium covered her on an author shelf, and this was her book. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was, you could clearly see kind of the differences between the myth and her telling of the story, but I think she did it really wonderfully, and she really makes you root for the side that's generally not rooted for by the end of it, right? This is kind of like your wicked stepmother
guys?
fairy tale, right? Where she's in the original, she's the wicked person, and in this one, she's the good one. She's realized she's trying to help everybody and to solve these issues, causing herself lots of pain and grief. But it was really fun and really, really good. I thought it was very kind of empowering. So
I love stories where you root for the bad guys. Cool. My number 5 is The Dispossessed by Ursula K. LeGuin. I've read some LeGuin, and I've liked everything I've read, and I need to read more of her because I think she's a genius. But this might be my favorite of hers. It's in the Hainish cycle that she wrote, which is a little kind of loosely connected universe. The same universe as the Left Hand of Darkness, which is what most people have read. And I like the Dispossessed even more, even though the Left Hand of Darkness is incredible, and I highly recommend it. But it's about equality, fairness, justice, capitalism, anarchism, a lot of big political ideas, and in the same styles, like in a better style and more like a new wave of classic sci-fi. I've been thinking about it. I'm still thinking about it. It's interesting. Check it out.
It's a great book, and people should read. More people should read it. And more people should read LeGuin in general.
I agree. I've been reading some of her essays. Her essays are excellent too, and it's hard to overstate how much influence she has had on the genre. And I just get the feeling that people in, like, I don't know, past the year 2000 just kind of don't think about her much, and that's a shame. I have a classic copy of The Dispossessed right here. I'm showing it off of the camera.
Oh, that's the cover that looks like it's a cataclysm that's about to happen.
Yeah,
sweet.
star.
So my next book is The Book of Witches, edited by Jonathan Strahan, and it's basically the sequel to the Book of Dragons, and that was an anthology about, well, dragon short stories, and this one is basically an anthology of witches, and it has a lot of high-profile authors in it, or authors who are very highly praised by professional community. Like we are talking about Amal El-Motar, P. D. Shelley, Clark, Carv Nix, Ken Leo, Fonda Lee, more and more. Like a lot of big names.
Yeah.
And the short stories are also really, really good. Like really highly recommended.
I might check it out.
It's a wide variety of authors too in the
Yes.
genre.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I love Ken Liu. Storm.
My number 5 is The First Sister by Lyndon Lewis. The book, it's like The Expanse meets The Handmaid's Tale is how I would describe it. It is
Sounds depressing.
it is but it's also a fun sci-fi story. It is there are parts that are darker, certainly like some of that the more subject matter, but it reads pretty quickly, and it moves pretty fast. It's also pretty queer in terms of the characters, and yeah, it's fun. Fun is kind of a word I would use to describe it, despite how dark some of the subject matter could be.
Why not
and
both?
Yeah, and the sequel, and I'm enjoying the sequels so far, if not as much as the first one. It's a cool world, and I'm curious to see how the final one, because there's a trilogy, how the final one
Is the
ends.
sequel called Second Sister?
It is called The Second Rebel, and the final one is called The Last Hero, which I choose to interpret as a signifying to readers that this is actually a trilogy and not what started as a trilogy and became not a trilogy. Looking at stuff like Locked Tomb, for example, or some other series. Skyward also does this. Yeah.
Cool. Chesky, you're number 4.
My number 4, I'm going to go with The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is a book heavily about relationships and the impact people have in other people's lives. It's about a girl who makes a deal with a demon and immediately regrets it, of course, and about her method of trying to get back at him and then finding her own happiness at the same time. It was a lot of fun. Pretty short.
Faustian?
Yeah, a little bit, but she only makes one deal with him. So
I love stories that deals with the devil. They're always, I shouldn't say always, but they're usually something at least a little interesting.
yeah.
Cool. My number 4 is The Return to Edan by Philip Chase. This is another book that the Greed team did an episode on, and I was on it. And the whole Edan trilogy was a pleasant surprise for me this year. We decided to cover it because I have a lot of respect for Philip Chase. I love his content. I love his videos, especially with AP. But I didn't know if he could write. I thought he's competent, he's smart, maybe he can. And The Way of Edan was very good, like better than most things I read. And then he released the Prophet of Edan, and that was excellent. Like it was really, really good. And finally, with his final book in the trilogy, I could confidently say it was nearly a masterpiece. I think it's one of the best books I've read about religion, and it has incredible complex characters, moral ambiguity. It made me cry. Yeah, it's heartbreaking, breathtaking, and I would liken it to like Beowulf and Tolkien and LeGuin and Gabriel Kelly, but most of all, I would compare him to a better John Guin, because he does some of the stuff that John Guin does, but just a lot more interesting, in my opinion.
I'll add it to the list for no other reason than the number of times it comes up, and I'm sure will continue to come up in conversations.
So one more time.
I will add it to the list if for no other reason than the amount of times it has come up in conversations in various places.
Me and Ash have been singing the praises of this book like ever since we started reading it, and then suddenly Era comes. He's like, "Hey guys, you guys should read it." Everyone's like, "Oh, we gotta check this out." Era has all the power in the server.
Naja, after the spear, who cuts water? Which cuts water? Was it? Well, after that recommendation, it was just so good.
Okay, Era it does give good recs.
Mm.
Star.
Yes. So my next book is All the Sunken Souls and I'm gonna apologize beforehand because I will probably butcher that name. Is edited by Sergei Moscovitz. So I don't know if I said it correctly, so I'm sorry. But it's an anthology by an all team of Black writers or POC writers in general, and it's a horror short story collection, and it's basically tackling stories about the Black experience, like poverty or survival, Black history, Black trauma, and the consequences of it. And there are several stories that are still very much in my head. Like there's the one story that is a twisted version of Tooth Fairy, and it goes very dark. And then the last story is a really interesting twist on the twin story, like when they switch places. That's that story. Uh, and yeah, there are just really interesting ways the authors subverted my expectations multiple times.
Ooh, Storm.
These next two are very close, and I wasn't sure which to put where, but number 4 for me would be The Traitor Borrow Cormorant by Seth Dickinson. So
Yeah, that's
more and
good.
more, it's a good book. More and more, I'm respecting authors that set expectations for having characters make difficult choices and actually have to live with or sit with, sit through the consequences of those choices.
Consequences
Dickinson,
are what make it
yes.
interesting. Another GT
Mhm.
episode.
Yeah, and he really pushes his character to the brink in ways that I haven't seen many authors do. The plot itself I thought was good, not great. But I do appreciate the general, I'll say, importance of economics in imperialism angle. But and so the way the story explores themes of imperialism, power, what that power or fear of not having that power does to people, really has me wanting to read the sequels.
Wow.
What I would say also, expect very class window prose. Like that
Yeah,
was my problem, but that was my main problem with the book. Like I couldn't get through the book because of the prose.
that's fair.
Yeah.
There are parts of it that both plot wise and language wise are a little dry.
Mm.
So I get that.
I really liked book 1, and every book after that, unfortunately for me, fell in favor. So
I like book 2. I definitely preferred book 1. Cool. Next, number 3, Chesky.
all right, I'm going to go on audible on my place here and just go with my nonfiction book here. This would be Before We Go Live by a streamer. His streamer name is Jorbs. His real name is Stephen Flavel. That's what he published it under. But he just talks a lot about like when he went live streaming and like the world of streaming and like its abuses and its problems and its positives. It was a really interesting look at the relationship that people have with streamers, that he's had with other people, that he's had with other content creators and stuff. It was really interesting and fun, but at the same time, kind of deep and like thoughtful about like how we interact with people online.
Parasocial relationships are interesting.
Yeah,
Oh, it's my turn.
yeah.
My number 3 is The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez.
Yeah.
Unsurprising.
Yes.
It
Yes.
I don't have much to say about this book. Green Team also did an episode on this one. And I was not in it. I wish it was, but I didn't read it at the time. They did an excellent job of selling it. If you don't feel like listening, maybe if this were any other year, this would probably be my number 1. It's just I read 2 books that I thought were literal masterpieces. I know I said masterpieces already, but like my top 4 are just sorry. I primarily enjoyed it for its style. It's gorgeous, and it causes me to read over sections over and over just because of how beautiful they are and how moving it is. It's not an easy read, and the story works on several diegetic levels, and it shifts between them sometimes in the middle of paragraphs. But that's why I enjoyed the book. and the POV switch from third and second and first as well. But to the credit of Jimenez, it's not confusing. I didn't find the POV switches really all that disorienting, and he telegraphs everything very well. The dude can write, and I can't wait for his next books. And I need to read The Falling Birds, which I think is the last book he wrote. I can't sing enough about it. It's an ode to storytelling. It's about stories. It's about immigrants. It's about memories. It's about identity. It's about violence and family. It's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, seconded. This will be coming up later in my list as well.
Unsurprising.
Star.
Yeah. Okay. After this one, like my first two like they're my first and second place are both first place. I'm gonna say this already. So if someone chooses accidentally one of them, I'm probably gonna go in a corner and cry because I love them so much. But my third place is Frieren Beyond Journey's End. It's
Oh, I was that close to putting out my worst of 2023 reads.
no, no. I'm gonna fight you on this. No. But it's adventure fantasy manga about an elf who is immortal and killed the demon king with her team. And basically, it's about the time after they defeated the demon king, and her team all died, and only the elf is left, and she still wanders around the world. And it's basically about the exploration of found family, grief, immortality, and it really has gorgeous art, and it leans more traditionally shonen. So the people who traditionally like shonen probably will like also Frieren. And there, like later, some of the story arcs are just so good, and I really can't wait until they're animated. Yeah.
Cool.
I've heard good things about it, mostly.
Sure.
My number 3 would be Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. It's probably the most, or at least that I've read so far, the most straightforward Abercrombie book. Certainly in terms of like the more traditional narrative structure. It is probably also my favorite Abercrombie book. There's something about these character arcs in particular that feels representative of grimdark as a genre. I feel like him having a more simplified plot really helps with that. It really helps to have it like accentuates how like cutting the arcs are, and yeah, I'm not gonna say it. I mean, I'm not gonna say it. I can't say a ton more without spoiling things about the specific characters, but it's a classic. It's a revenge story. It's almost like Kill Bill as a book, and it's really good. If
I also read that last year, and it just missed on my list. I also think it's my favorite of Abercrombie stuff. I think it's his best as well.
Okay, that's I feel alone in that, so that's good to note.
Really,
It's-
that's interesting.
I think that his having, like you said, having less plot helps him. I think.
I agree completely. We could talk about this later. Jesky, number
All
2.
right. My number 2 is the book Jereg by Stephen Brust. We started reading it to cover on the Green Team podcast. It's a lot of fun. It's very exciting and interesting, and it's an older book, but it doesn't feel like an older book, if that makes sense. And to my shame, I did, before we started, get this one confused with Elric of Melniboné. So somehow I had conflated the two characters into one, and so I went in with wildly different expectations, but still liked it. So.
Isn't Elric the is that like the
Michael
he's
Moorcock?
like yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Like Proto Grim Dark. Yeah.
yeah. And this one is similar to that because he's a gang boss. Right, it doesn't shy away from showing you the stuff he does. So
Cool. I intend to read that soonish, maybe.
there's only
Okay.
16 books.
Somebody already mentioned this earlier, but my number 2 of 2023 was The Fifth Head of Cerberus by Gene Wolfe. 2023 could have been called the year of Gene Wolfe for me. I read my first Wolfe in 2022, but I really, really read a lot last year. I read The Knight, The Wizard, Island of Dr. Death, and other stories, Endangered Species, Stories from the Old Hotel, and Book of Days, and several other short stories just here and there. But there was one standout, and it was The Fifth Head of Cerberus. It was originally published as a short story, just the first one, but I guess its publishers liked it so much they requested 2 more, and they could publish it as a novel made up of 3 different novellas. It makes sense if you actually read it. Well, it doesn't actually make sense. With a lot of work and help, it'll make sense as a novel. It's tricky. It's beautiful. It's a puzzle. It takes work. It's genius. It's a work of post-colonial theory, and it's about the colonization of 2 worlds and the effect that the colonization had on the people living there already and the people who are coming in. And it's about memory, identity, inheritance, colonial erasure, etc., etc. And the first story is about a boy growing up in a very strange environment, and the second is a story of aliens that were colonized, or is it? And the third is about a boy written from the perspective of the writer of the second story. And it sounds weird and vague, but like that's just kind of how you have to go with Gene Wolfe, without spoilers. And it's a tough read, but it's something that I still think about like almost every single day.
Yeah, I think "or is it" is a pretty operative phrase when talking about a lot of things with Wolf.
Yeah.
You could say that about you read a page, well, or is it, or did this actually happen, or
Yeah, yeah.
is that how it happened?
And the thing with Wolf is it's difficult, and I'm not saying he didn't ever do anything wrong because I'm sure he's not perfect with his writing, but like when you read Wolf, there's always a chance that you just missed it. Like it's your fault. And I get that.
That's what I love.
That's
I
how I
get that
felt with a
sometimes.
lot of it. Yeah.
My
love being
favorite
blamed by
story
the
was the
author.
second one. He's not blaming you. He's
I
just
know. I
telling
just
you to
teasing you.
catch up.
There's another author on. Well, I'm not going to go there. But yeah.
So I love the First Head of Cerberus, and I'm going to read it over and over again. Star.
God. I really don't know which one of the 2 I should talk about first. I
Do the
think
one
I'm
that was almost missed my worst of reads.
I already talked the one. Wait,
All
Freedom
of your
was
top 3 were
one.
almost on my worst of reads.
No, just no. This is mean.
You know me?
Huh?
Nothing. Go on. Sorry.
So I'm gonna go with The Bone Key by Sarah Monet, probably better known as Catherine Edison, the author of The Goblin Emperor.
I know that one.
Yeah. And it's a queer horror short story collection from 2007. I have to say this. I did not expect that this will be one of my favorites this year. But especially because it's queer. I did not expect that it was from 2007 when I looked it up.
Yeah, isn't
But
Goblin Emperor 2010 in the 2010s?
Yeah, I
I
think so.
think yes.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yes.
Hmm.
And all of them featuring Kai Murkison Booth, officially one of my favorite characters of all time now. Like
Wow.
really, like do you all remember Kelleher from the Goblin Emperor? Do you remember the
It's
detective?
been a while.
Yes.
Yes.
I remember the
Yes.
detective.
You remember how he gives off that puppy vibes?
Yes.
Kai Murkison Booth is a mile above that. Like he gives even more that puppy vibes, and I just love him.
So like
Um,
the author has a character type they like then.
yes, like all of the short stories are basically inspired by Lovecraft or MRJ, and it's basically an answer to them. Like it's a lot more queer. It's a lot more. How should I say? A lot more progressive, as especially Lovecraft has things that didn't age as so well. And Yeah, some of those stories are just so heartbreaking, and others are just really terrifying. And the way the short stories are just completely different, but also the same genre and also the same characters. Like there was also one short story where I just laughed out loud, even though it was a horror short story. And
Those are
yeah,
good.
yeah, and it's just like Kyle Merkson Booth. It's just he's just really awkward, shy, and just really, really neurotic. And it's just like you just want to take him and just stand in front of him and be like, I won't let anyone hurt you.
Oh,
Like the puppy meme. Like I have known the puppy only for 5 minutes, but if anything happened to him, I will
mm,
Got
kill
everyone
everyone
here, and
and
then
myself in this room. This is the energy he gives off.
Cool.
Interesting.
Storm.
my number 2 is The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. Hurin already said a lot about it, and everything he said is correct. This is probably the most unique fantasy book that I've read in a long time. It's epic, but also intimate, and is kind of a meditation on imperialism, violence, vulnerability, family, carrying on like generational traditions and generational trauma. It also has some very cool action scenes and one of the most horrific villains that I've ever read about. And his prose style is gorgeous, but still grounded somehow.
I like what you said,
Right.
epic but intimate, because that's a good way to
Mhm.
describe it.
Yeah, and
Oh
I
yeah,
have to say, I never expected to like an ending like that. Also, the last two pages, or I think it was only the last 2 pages. I never expected to like how it ended.
Right.
Good
I
ending.
can't say more without spoilers.
There's another
yeah,
book that did a
it's
similar ending, and they failed hard on their face.
it's also like another just plugging it as a very good queer book.
Mm.
Okay, last one, Chesky.
Last one. This is a cheat a little bit, but not really. I'm going to go with the Throne in the Dark, but then I'm going to say the whole Villains and Virtues series by A.K. Kagiano. It's a really fun, just like a little bit of a dark romance, but more romance, and then turns into a regular hero's quest kind of thing. But it was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed it. It was a blast, so I really recommend it to people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last book for me, and the best one. I read it twice last year, actually. Well, I should say I read it once, and then I listened to a podcast read the entire book and then discuss it after each episode. But it is Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. I love this book so much. Um, as you could tell, how much I gushed about the last ones, like this is still, I think, above the last ones that I've discussed. It's kind of like an anti-irony book about growing up, about addiction, human connection, faith, movies, tennis. And it was written last century, but it was strangely prescient about a lot of things that are going on now. It about how entertainment has gone and crisis and addiction and that kind of thing. Seriously, it's the funniest book I've ever read. It's got it's I don't know, it's like 1,200 something pages. It's really, 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 really long, and it's maximalist. So if you're looking for something short and tight, don't read it.
Skip it.
I'm sorry, do not read this if you don't want like long, complex sentences and a lot of really fluff. Because like not everything here is needed. It's not. Do I love it? Yes, because it's written so well, and even if it is fluff, it really is there to like service the characters and the themes. And the characters are so good. I love them so much. But I was laughing at the absurdism, at the puns, at the tragedy, and I was also crying and just heartbroken over several of the scenes of mostly takes place in something like addiction centers, and like I was disgusted. Like nothing's made me feel such extreme emotions like this book did. It's not an easy book either. It's got a very 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 weird structure, and I don't know. It's just one of my favorites. I can't wait to reread it.
Sounds
Start.
interesting.
Mhm. My first place is The Summer Hikaru Died, BL horror manga, and also BL means boys love, also so basically it's queer.
Big
And
surprise.
And it's an exploration of teenage love, self-hate, isolation, grief, and a lot more stuff. And the art is really just gorgeous. Like I can't. It's hard to find really an equivalent, but I think the closest I can get would be to say Violet Evergarden, like that kind of level, or just the level from artistry, not in the kind of art style, but just from the artistry. I would also say Witch Hat Atelier. So those two I would put on the same level. And it's basically about a boy whose friend, who is called Hikaru, has gone missing. And when he comes back, the boy knows that Hikaru isn't the same person more, or is himself. And even though no one else notices it, and he doesn't even act any different, like, or looks any different. And when he confronts him, Hikaru panics, and his face just melts off. And he just says to his friend that he can't tell anyone because else he has to kill his friend and the pages, and it just goes from there because the friend agrees, and then it comes this kind of exploration of just grief and self-hate, because it's like he knows Hikaru isn't there anymore, but but this creature acts the same and has the same memories and has apparently the same feelings as the Hikaru before him. And he doesn't know, is it okay for me to ignore this, to be happy that he is in a version still there even when he is dead. And it's just so heartbreaking, but also so interesting. And there are only two volumes out until now, but it goes in a really interesting direction so far, because there are other monsters apparently also, and they are starting to haunt the village they are living in. And it just
You really
Sounds
love it.
intense.
I love it so much.
I think
Very
we get that. I hope the listeners do as well. Okay, last one, Storm.
My favorite book that I read in 2023 was The Farthest Shore by Ursula K. Le Guin.
Oh,
Yeah.
It just beat out Beer Crush Through Water, I think, because the book is perfect. It's a great capstone to the original 3 Earthsea books. So I had appreciated Le Guin's skill at a more intellectual level before, like when I'd read Dispossessed and Left Hand of Darkness. But this was the book that really sold me on her as a master above many other speculative fiction writers. The book had me in tears and hit me emotionally. In addition to that intellectual appreciation, and that I think was that emotional element, I think, was what had been previously, I don't want to say missing, but other than parts of other than parts of the other 2 Earthsea books, or the first 2 Earthsea books, I should say, she hadn't hit me quite as hard at that level. But this book really accomplished that. Yeah,
Le Guin's great.
People should read more Le Guin.
I really grew to appreciate her a lot last year. She was really good friends with Mr. Wolfe.
I think she does the I think she has a foreword in one of the book in the New Sun editions, I think. If I'm
Probably.
remembering
She wrote a
correctly.
lot of things about him
Yeah.
for him.
Yeah.
And vice versa, I believe. I want to say congratulations to Star. I had literally never heard of any of your top 10, so you accomplished what you set out to do, and good job.
Yeah, I
But
wrote down a few that I will be asking about from people.
if any of our listeners have decided to pick up a book that we recommended based on this episode, please let us know. But I guess that's it. Does anybody want to say anything before we sign off?
2023 was a good year for books, and I hope 2024 is just as good.
I just want to say, please read Hikaru. The summer Hikaru died. I need someone to talk about with it.
Maybe in the show notes we should get a list of
I was
all the books.
just writing something down about that. Yep.
Okay.
Good idea.
All right, so I guess that's it. That has been our discussion of 2023 books. Hope we get it released soon. Thanks, Craig, for letting us use this as a way to talk about stuff we like. And our outro is Jingle Bunks. Bye. I'm Hurin fan.
Bye.
Thanks for listening.
I'm
Bye.
Starkast.
Fix it in post.